All right, guys, here we are. This is, we're going to call the Mayhem Athlete Cycle Overview Into the Storm. We did one of these a few months ago before we started the Hulk Out cycle, which started beginning of the summer. Started the off-season for most athletes, 99%, unless you competed alongside some of our guys at semifinals and games.
And girls.
And gals, and teams. And that's it.
Inclusivity, language.
Got them all, I think. Masters, teens, adaptive.
They.
Oh, boy.
Now we're done.
There we go.
Cut.
Keep going.
Started early.
Yeah.
The
CrossFit games, anyone?
Oh, man.
Let's not go there
Wait till
yet.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's another link. Check that in the show notes for the that podcast.
That'll come out before this.
That will. That's true. You've already seen that. So we'll talk about fitness here. Maybe that too. But we want to get these to you guys so you know what's coming up. This will drop right before the cycle comes out into the storm cycle. I'll give a pretty in-depth overview of like what's going to be in the cycle, what days, what's the Metcon focus, the aerobic progression, gymnastic progression, and what Sage has for us on the strength side. Talk about like why it is the way it is, especially this time of the year, how you can take it, use it if you're open athlete, quarterfinals athlete will be the biggest focus. Also touch on semifinals. You guys, we've got you included throughout too. We'll add in some extra work now in volume because we're getting a little bit further away from your being to recover from competition and being completely pure off season, and then just see what will look like the rest of the year leading into this. So
is that mic uncomfortably close to you? You look like you're like leaning back.
It's not a good
Stay
posture.
away from the mic.
I should stay close.
Oh, all right.
Okay?
I mean, you're supposed to just imagine it teleporting to your mouth, but it just looked like you were getting like way back here. Do what you want, man.
Okay.
It's your mic. You do what you want.
You hear me good?
You sound the best.
Oh, sweet. Get back there. It's a little chin tuck.
There you go. Turkey neck.
So we got into the storm cycle. This will be 8 weeks. This will start first week of September. We'll go through October. We worked on with the SMEs, subject matter experts. So we got Pamela taking over the gymnastics as usual. Henshaw's written us an aerobic progression. He's going to get us a 5K focus, which will be twice a week or 20 minutes on the machine. In the Hulk Out cycle, we had 50 minutes on the machine or 5 miles if you did that. That was on Thursdays, Saturdays. This one will look the same. We'll dovetail in that shorter time domain, really pick back up right after we left off there. We'll go a little bit shorter, a little bit more intense on that. The gymnastics, Pamela's got us a couple days a week, usually Tuesday and Friday. We're going to test out rope climbs in 3 minutes and strict handstand push-ups in 3 minutes. Depending on what workouts come up, it might vary a little bit on which day it is, but we're just going to work on that now. Let's work on rope climb volume, strict handstand push-up volume. We'll see those then. And then we'll do some interval work, some percentages. So in 8 weeks, we'll retest that. Sage has got us on the strength. We did a lot of powerlifting, a lot of bodybuilding style and Hulk Out to really work on some hypertrophy, building some muscle and just laying some groundwork strength for the bulk of the off season. This will move into a little bit more Olympic lifting focused with some percentage work and technique there as well. Mondays, you'll see snatches and front squats. Tuesdays, we'll do upper work with pressing and push jerk, split jerk. Wednesday, we'll move to the clean. Friday, we either have box squats or back squats, and we'll flip each week between snatching and clean jerking. And then Saturday, we finish with the upper focus again. We'll have some horizontal pressing with bench press, and then either rows or some kind of pulling there to complement that push. With the Metcons, what we do nowadays is we try to give enough variance so you guys don't see the same thing and get bored, but we have some themes that we'll roll through. So Mondays, we'll have our classic Mayhem Athlete one-to-one work rest focus. With that, you'll see some Metcons that you can go back and forth to the partner. Every once in a while, we might change it up, but it'll be shorter time domain where you can tag in and out 2 to 3 minutes, have fun, multiple sets, and get after it. On Fridays, we'll keep it pure CrossFit. In the past, we've seen some full send Fridays. We may have a few of those in there, but it'll be things like classic couplets, classic triplets. The first week, we'll hit some of the games workouts, the ones that we can. And actually, Friday, the first week, we're going to hit the Lazar's the Best workout. Some around here hit it the other day. It was the one he had on the morning chalk up, so I'll fit well that Friday. And then the rest of the week, we'll roll through. Sometimes it'll be powerlifting, maybe something like some AMRAPs of DT. That comes up pretty soon in 3-minute AMRAPs. How many times can you cycle through DT with built-in rest? We'll also have some upper muscle endurance focus with gymnastics. That's stuff we've seen a ton in the past. This might be like back and forth with a partner, toes to bar, strict handstand push-ups. We'll throw some machines in there, get a good bit of volume, but tag in and out so you can make sure to maintain some intensity. There'll be lots of movements that'll rotate through within that. Then we'll still have some longer aerobic work too, whether it's couplets, triplets. You're moving through 8 to 10-minute AMRAPs, but things you can stay moving so you're not getting bogged down at any one station on that as well. The only other one you'll see, we'll flip back and forth through things. We'll see like ascending rep schemes. So it allows you to stay moving the entire time, but you're not just blasting it. As the reps get higher, it slows you down. Or things where you got a big chunk of work like a chipper or a long aerobic piece into something classic like a couplet back and forth with that longer time domain. Just this time of the year, what we're thinking is we're not just completely off season again. Like we can start to push up the intensity a little bit, but you got to remember it's still September, October. We've still got months away from the Open and quarterfinals. So this is a time to really be hammering down on your weaknesses, to work on things and prioritize. Like if you need to get strong, this is a perfect time. Hit strength first every day. Let that be your focus in the off season. If aerobically you're not so hot, then like start off with the Metcon each day. You can flip it if it's not that in there, and then make sure you're hitting the aerobic progression. That's why we have the gymnastic work too, so you can push that as your focus as well, depending on what kind of athlete you are. So that's a big overview into the storm cycle. I'll tee us up with some questions. Kind of want to see what you guys think about like what this time of the year, how do you approach it and look at it, depending on what kind of athlete you are. And then Rich, for sure, like how you looked at the off season, which is a little bit different depending on what year it was or where you're looking at. But for you and even other athletes around you, what you're thinking as you moved in, for I guess your games perspective, one, like this would have been really soon after, but even and from your side, it would have been more like maybe December would be the equivalent of this because you would have been a few months out of competition, maybe like November.
Yeah, the hard part for me was most years we either had team series coming up or invitational, and I trained really hard, especially for the invitational. So that did put a little bit of a damper on my off season for a lot of years.
And didn't you do, side tangent, didn't you do like Kalsu a couple of days after the games one year?
Yeah,
the parking lot with Darren?
That sounds about right. I think it was, yeah, for sure. It was
remember that one?
at the lake. I think we did. Tim, Vivian got a houseboat, and so we all did Kalsu.
Did one year even earlier you did it in the parking lot on the way back, driving back? Maybe it was just clean jerks and burpees or something.
Yeah, I don't remember. I did a lot of dumb stuff. Yeah. I did work out when me and Hillary drove back. But, yeah, really the way I looked at it was start having fun again. The games just kind of grinds you down. If you're training for the games or training for anything, you get kind of you get a little bit beat up. You do lose a little bit of the fun side of it. At least I did towards the end of it. And then so this time of year it was like, all right, I'm going to keep doing fitness because I enjoy fitness, but I'm going to do things that I really like to do for fitness. But also you don't want to lose, kind of what you've gained up to that point. So a lot of machine work, a lot of taking pressure off of the joints, maybe slowing down the lifts a little bit this time of year. If you're right off of the games, I'm speaking to high level, but you can look at this as any competition you're doing, even if you're doing a local competition, like get to the point where you're having a couple weeks where you're having fun. I enjoy working out. Like that's why I started this in the first place. It became a job, which was one of the best jobs ever, but you still got to have fun and enjoy it if you want to get back to that grind. So, so you do want to like find some things and work on those weaknesses for sure, but also don't get so caught up in like, oh, I got to do this that, let's start having some fun again, getting the body back, maybe taking a little bit more time to do a little bit of mobility. Mobility wasn't a huge part of my routine because I am pretty hypermobile in most places. The older I get, the less I am. So more accessory stuff, more rehab, prehab, just working on those little things, a lot of, stability type stuff, a lot of carries, you can do those things, but also, doing a lot of machine work.
For sure. Laying that aerobic base.
Maybe a little less kipping on some things, a little bit more controlled.
I think that's what we tried to do this off season was come up with, you talk about the Metcon rotations and those themes is like, how can we play the game, play CrossFit, like do CrossFit, constantly varied, functional movement, et cetera.
At high intensity?
Or maybe even maybe limit intensity a little bit, right? Like add some bottlenecks and ladders and things that limit intensity a bit while you're still having fun with variation in training. Like you said, maybe that looks like, strict Fran that's a really lame example, but or overly simplistic. But I mean, the intensity goes down, but it's kind of like made me think of it when you said a kipping
intensity
pull-up.
and work capacity goes down, but
Yeah.
intensity and movement
Yeah.
goes a little harder, you know, because you're doing strict instead of, so you're still intensity there.
For
So
sure.
I wouldn't argue that we're
Well, the workout we just did this morning is
Yeah.
a good example too.
Yeah.
It's not that intense in terms of
pretty
like,
damn intense for me.
well, muscle endurance intensity, but in terms of like breathing
Right.
and aerobic
Right. So
intensity, it's not there.
And so,
Yeah.
but I think people think breathing intensity
Yeah,
always.
for sure.
No, like intensity is still, like we're saying, going to muscle. There was still a ton. For me, there was a bunch of intensity in that
Yeah.
workout. It was a different. It's not a. You know, we get so. I think CrossFitters get so caught up in. I've got to be breathing hard for that to be a harder and intense workout.
Well, 5x5 back squat is intense,
if
right?
you do
Like,
it right.
yeah, with
Yeah.
loading. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Differentiating between what we mean by intensity.
Yep.
So, and right now, I'd say if most people need to get stronger, you cannot have that much aerobic intensity. It's going to be harder to get stronger that way.
You can't
right.
have that much aerobic volume.
Or
You can
better-
have aerobic
yeah,
intensity
fair.
for sure. You
Yeah.
need actually you need aerobic intensity when you're doing strength work.
Yeah,
But it needs to be smaller volume
yeah.
because
fair.
you know a bunch of sprints and whatever that stuff will actually help your strength work. But if we're doing a ton of long, slow stuff, then no.
Probably as much recoverable intensity as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it depends on when you do it for sure a ton well. Kind of like it helps, like you said, if you really, really want to get better, you got to do the stuff you suck at. But like the mental grind of like, yeah, probably
Yeah,
on Monday
there's a-
morning, you're going to do that. But then Tuesday or Monday afternoon, you have some piece you look forward to.
Yeah, there's a nuance to it. You can't just beat people down all the time. Some people you can, you know, and that's on us or you as a coach to figure out. You know, some people want that. You know, like you look at Dre, Dre just wants to smash himself all the time, and it's
Yeah.
at times you got to pull the reins back on somebody like that. And so, yeah, you just got to be smart with what you're doing.
For sure. That's what so I just didn't start training like I was 13 with you. So
Mhm.
you were 3 or 4 years in or so, but I didn't have any idea and I would just smash myself and
Mhm.
I never really got stronger I did some because this newbie gains and we did so much, you're going to get better at everything, but I wish I'd known that then because while you guys moved into games training, it was really my off season time and I was just still doing like 3 or 4 Metcons a day, getting fitter somewhat, but really not getting stronger. Thankfully aerobic. I was always a pretty aerobic athlete, but I think a lot of people get stuck on that and they're addicted like I was, just the endorphin dump after each workout and want that like feeling of accomplishment like tons of athletes do, but you have to find a balance and I guess really learn and enjoy some of the longer like do an accessory piece. Sometimes that's what you need to do and that's the best thing for you. Then a lot of days you can still do Metcons and be fine, but just limiting the amount and what the intention is behind it for sure is a big deal in that. Dre's a great example for that.
It depends what the goal is too, right? Like Rich
Right.
was saying, if you have, if going hard all the time is what you enjoy, but if you want to compete at a higher level
Right.
and you have a strength deficit, you know, like Dre, if you can't snatch a certain load, you're like, well, we have to pull the reins
We
back.
have
But
to.
that's where it is. Like,
it's
you can-
depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
What the ultimate
yeah.
goal is. Like,
But we're talking about Mayhem compete, right? So in that case, it would be like, we're going to assume most people need to get stronger in the
that's
offseason.
the biggest limiting factor most commonly is strength. So we're going to, as we get close to the season, one thing we are like known for, especially back in the day, you'd always start with the Metcon. So as we get close to the open, majority of days we probably will start with the Metcon, but now most people need to get stronger. We'll start with the strength. Still hit the Metcon or conditioning, but almost all days hit that because since we're programming for the most common person in that and trying to get as much benefit as we can each day, but remembering what time of the year it is in that. What did tell them some about like when we talked to Sage, what were you thinking as we developed really the strength program? Sage wrote 8 weeks for this in the storm, building off obviously off Hulk cycle, coming into this with the focus on, you can tell them some about the Olympic lifting. We still won with squats.
Yeah.
Upper days.
Well, more big picture with the thought process is just, we're essentially running the strength continuum, to use a fancy word, right? Like if the previous cycle Hulk out was powerlifting based and you're moving like higher loads a little bit slower, now we're going to move lighter loads a little bit faster, aka Olympic lifting, right? So more velocity on the lifts. So now ideally you have that strength base. Like let's say that, I know for me, I'm a good example of somebody who needed more time in like a Hulk out cycle, because in the past, I could power clean more than I could squat clean. Like I could power clean like 320 or 330, but I could only squat clean like 320. So I just needed a front squat a lot, right? So like building that base of absolute strength with the power lifts, and now we're going into the Olympic lifts. And you mentioned like in that Metcon rotation that we have, now we take that strength we've built in the power lifts and we turn it into battery work, right? Like how do we get really good at moving 80-ish% on deadlifts and back squats and things like that as we're focusing on like heavy snatches, heavy cleans, et cetera. So, and then you take that ideally then kind of going into the new year, and you basically do the same thing that you did with powerlifting with the Olympic lifts and get really good at moving
cycling
80% or touch and go work or muscle endurance with snatches or
well, you know, when I say cycling, I'm not just saying touch and go. Like it could be just pick it up and drop it, but you're able to do that.
Like a heavy grace as an example. So
definitely. Yeah. So a little less powerlifting overall, because last one we did a lot of press, squat, and deadlift. We even maxed out most of them. It'd technically be like this week as we're recording this. That's what like Sage does too. Like we're still going to hit like percentage work and build the foundational strength Olympic lifts, but she'll keep some wave work like we like to keep it some maybe breathing in there, or also just not the monotony of just this 5x1 or 5x3.
It's got to be a little bit fun.
Yeah, definitely. The something I try to keep in count too, kind of like you're saying, the overuse. Sage does a great job of doing successory, as we call it, or pre-accessory, prehab movement, and then I try to keep it layered so you're only squatting heavy at least no more than 2 to 3 times a week. So it'll be a couple of days the strength won't even have squatting in at all, to keep that in mind for the joints and long-term health, because that really plays in. I've really tried to think about that more over the years as like my knees hurt.
Why?
What happens when it's probably the 20 rep. That probably effed me up more than anything. The 20 rep back squat.
No,
it's my own fault.
I look back
like
at
garbage.
2015 when we used to do the 10 reps. I think it was a 3-person rotation. I was talking to Hobart about this the other day. I think it was 225. You'd do 10 reps, 3 people, and you'd go 225, 235, 245, 255, 265, up to like, it was 10 sets. Jeez. The next week we'd have 5 pounds from the start and just keep doing that.
So 100?
It was 100 reps.
German volume.
However, we smashed rotation. Murph that year with the worm, because everybody was dropping the worm. We just smashed the overhead squats. Now I had tendonitis for 5 years after that, but you know,
well, was it worth it?
Small price to pay. You know, like everybody's like, oh yeah, your knees hurt, blah blah blah. CrossFit's dangerous. I'm like, no, it's at the higher end. Like you look at NFL players.
That's German volume training.
It really is. That's 10 by 10, man.
Yeah,
10 by 10. But yeah, I mean, do I look back and be like, would I have done things smarter? Probably not. Had to learn it, right? You know, and that's why we're here. Let us make the mistakes for you.
Yeah.
Testing. Tell them did we already tell them what we tested today?
Yeah, we just tested a workout today, and luckily we tested it for you. A lot of that's what's the good news about a lot of this stuff is either it's been tested at some variation and either tweaked or amped up, and that one was definitely tweaked down. The idea, in theory, was 150 GHDs. On a running clock, you have every 2 minutes, you had to start with no rest. Every 2 minutes, 2 pegboards. It started at 3 pegboards, went down to 2 pegboards before we started, and then 12 dumbbell bench with 75s, and then max reps GHDs.
Went from 3 pegboard to 2 pegboard to 1 pegboard for me.
Yeah, for you.
From
and then
12 bench to 10 bench for me.
Did you go down to 10 bench?
Yeah, from 150 GHD.
I think it should have. I
GHD.
think maybe it should have been 10 bench from the start.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do, if 150 GHDs was your goal, we ended up cutting it to 100 GHDs in the workout because it just got to the point where I was failing on the bench, and not failing, but doing like 3s and 2s. So we test stuff here. That's the good news. We got a pretty good group of athletes to test things and let them know before you guys see it.
Yeah, I got a super scaled version for everyone else too. Don't worry. I dropped a rope climbs in 9 reps, and I did 100 GHDs.
There you go.
I was proud. Running doesn't make you better. All that. Heads up. Yeah, definitely. And I pull every couple of weeks. We're hitting a repeat now-ish from like a year or 2 ago, or just a variation of it. And then the good thing is, I don't know, I think 9 out of 10 times you can kind of know when you're at a workout, like, this is going to do what I want. But probably 10% of the time I miss.
Yeah.
Unless
if
when
I
everyone
was to
else
do
is
that
looking
workout, I probably would have had the 1 minute rest in there between sets, and that might have fixed our problem.
That would have fixed it.
Yeah, because I took that round off.
But you guys wanted to.
That was good.
We did want to go straight through.
We wanted to go straight through, so I said, all right, let's
Well, we do so much interval work,
I know,
so sometimes it's nice to just go.
Yeah. I like interval work.
We do like interval work.
Well, because it maintains intensity.
Yeah.
Which, case in point, this morning, we all fell apart.
That's what.
It was all muscle endurance.
That's probably the biggest way in the off season. You probably like. dampened your intensity? Just did a ton of muscle endurance work, don't you think?
Yes and no. Actually, no. I would. Yes, I mean we do that all year round. Like
That's true. Yeah, I like a ton of session twos.
yeah, there's no. Over the years, it's just I one thing that we've done a lot of, or I did a lot of, was switch to a lot of interval stuff. To maintain intensity, you just get to a point where you're just bashing your head against the wall. So that's where I think we put in a lot of the intervals in there.
What year did you transition more to that?
I want to say 13-ish, maybe 13, 12. It kind of ebbed and flowed, honestly. Like early on, it was just straight, just Metcon, smash yourself, till probably 12-ish, and then I did,
That was like everyone back then.
It was really when different machines started to show up, I would probably say, because before that it was just row and more cardio was a barbell.
The old Airdyne.
Body weight stuff. And then I started doing random Airdyne stuff. Like every morning would start with an Airdyne, try to get the 300 calories in 10 minutes. And
when do you feel like your strength peaked?
Before I tore my meniscus, 2017. That was like direct decline when I tore my meniscus in 2017.
Were you still getting stronger up to that point?
Yeah,
most part, or like what? I
quit focusing as much on strength because my numbers were
like what year do you think that was?
16, 17.
Okay.
And I could snatch 300 whenever I needed to. Nobody did that in competition until 2020.
What would you attribute that to? Like, why were you able to get so much stronger, like with all the volume?
Genetics.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
I mean,
but I think that's a good thing. That's one thing
answer.
When I've talked, like getting to know you more over the last
early arm pull.
Yeah, early arm bend. Over the last 2 years, is like it's that always, when a lot of people outside of Mayhem are always like, but rich, and it's like, I mean, that's a classic. Like you cannot use the exception.
Perfect storm.
Yeah.
Really good parents, like hardworking parents, family, not just parents, family, right? Like that's how I was brought up. Super competitive, like good coaches, super competitive. Genetics.
And moved really well too.
Move well, be an athlete. Like,
But
I would genetics. I would tie into that. That's really what.
But it's
was.
just important.
And according to the internet, steroids.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the only way you can get to where I am is with steroids.
But it's always the mistake we make is using the exception to disprove the rule, right? Where it's like, well, I can do this much more.
Well, here's the deal too: is I have an exercise science background. Everybody talks about oh well, he just got lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you
it wasn't
a 4-year degree and almost a master's in exercise science. Not to mention I was a strength coach for a little while,
But I'm almost trying to even make like all that proves or gives more validity to like the cycles of training now, where it's like, hey, if you're not that outlier, I always like the phrase we can't count outliers, like they don't count, right? Like we cannot you'd be like, oh, this worked for Rich, like, and that's why you've always been humble and been like, I don't mean
it doesn't work for everybody.
No. Exactly, yeah. And odds are, if you're listening to this, you're probably not Rich, and you're not one of those genetic outliers. Maybe there's one listening, but the vast majority are not. And you're gonna have to, if strength is your biggest area of opportunity, you're gonna have to pull back
and do some work
in other areas.
Well, even in 13, we did a super intense and big Olympic lifting cycle, didn't we?
All the time.
That's
I ran
300.
I ran Olympic cycles all the time. We used Catalyst a lot in the beginning. Used Coach B a lot. Like would just go on CrossFit weightlifting. Yeah. And then made up our own stuff of like barbell cycling on the minute stuff. And Dan posted one the other day, I think it was, where we did like 3 power cleans on the minute for 5 or 10 minutes, rested a minute, added weight, did 2s, rested a minute, did reps on 30 seconds, a little heavier. Like we did all kinds of stuff like that.
Is it fair to say the other part of it too,
5-3-1.
when we talk about strength, it being so nervous system driven, and a lot of listeners, like at the time, that time in life, your season in life, like you didn't have kids.
I didn't have kids. I
right?
slept
Like,
a lot.
Yeah. And like, this is all you did all day. Right. So it's like not just genetics, but your lifestyle allowed you to recover from more volume than other people.
Sleep. So everybody's like, what's the single most beneficial thing for recovery? Sleep.
Yeah.
I would sleep 10 hours.
Yeah.
9-10 hours.
Jeez. I don't think I was also
like
do that.
20 something. Like now I couldn't do that. Blackout curtains maybe, but
Yeah, that's for sure. Single hand, best thing you can do in the off season to get.
There's a direct
sleep.
correlation when I wearing Whoop. The last I've worn it how many years? If I average 8 hours a night of sleep, injury rate plummets. Like, or tweaky injury type stuff.
So if you probably mentioned some. Let's say we're open athlete, like clearly close to quarterfinals. I'm quarterfinals. I want to move up every year, but I'm gonna do this into the storm cycle. What's a few things they could do to, one, we may have mentioned some, like hone in, really work on either weakness work, whether that's strength, aerobic, gymnastic. What's a couple things they could do to do that while still making sure they can follow the cycle, but then either add in their own flavor or change the order of days so they enjoy it, but like still at the end of the day they're getting fitter throughout the 8 weeks.
The hard part is the blanket an athlete where I don't know, like, can you do the minimum weights that are prescribed in the open for your strength? We know that the open historically is a little bit more cardio / intensity driven. So definitely, like, I've had conversations with people at the gym that can do most Metcons RX'd. I'm like, add 1 or 2 interval sessions, on a machine, get here a little bit earlier, stay 30 minutes after doing some intervals could make a huge difference. Or vice versa. You're a cardio person, 30, 45 minutes extra of a little bit of strength or whatever could pay dividends, So it's hard to pick what your weakness is, and 2 or 3 times a week, make sure, prioritize whatever that workout. Like, all right, hey, there's 2 sessions or whatever sessions we have. What is my weakness? That one's first, Yeah,
it makes sense. So not every single day is like, but majority of the week almost.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where you're coming in.
But do not get, like, the hardest part for me too is this is my profession. This is how I made my living. Please don't neglect your family to get that extra session in. Amen. I'm beyond blessed that I have a gym downstairs. I have a gym out here, a gym at the gym, and my kids go with me everywhere, and they like hanging out and doing whatever, and we do stuff outside. So don't neglect your family for an extra session. But 30 minutes, 45 minutes most of the time, hey, get up a little earlier or whatever. As I said, sleep is the most important thing you should be doing. But
wake up earlier. Sacrifice.
That's the problem. You got to sacrifice something.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and too, that's why thankfully we do have Mayhem 60. So it's going to be this cycle. You just do it in 60 minutes and know, like, the aerobic progression. You can't do that in 60 minutes.
No, but you could hit the M60, and then if you've got 2 or 3 days where
if on Saturday you got 90 minutes, there you go.
Or an extra 30 minutes a day, you could hit the aerobic capacity stuff.
Yeah. That's what now too, for sure, like me, Foster, and I know work like super flexible, but as a whole, like we still got to do our job and we got to blanket and like block our time each day. And so have those kind of anchors. If you're a college kid, you're going to be able to work out like 3 hours. By the way, some kid in the gym was snatching like almost 300 the other day.
I think I saw a clean and jerk video.
He was like missing 280 over and over. But if you're that kid, just go. It'd be like we were back in the day. You can just run yourself on the ground, sleep 11 hours and recover. But if you're not, then block out like your time each morning. If it's 5 to 6, it's in here for that. So the order's laid out so you don't have to think about it. But don't be the guy coming home at 5:45, working out till 7, and
seeing your kids for an hour
for 45 minutes, or quitting your job unless you're just like
making a lot of money. Yeah.
You can email me. You can email programs@mayhemnation.com. I'll tell you if you should quit your job or not to train full time.
Learn to let go.
Email Angelo@mayhemnation.com. He'll give you a real dose of reality.
That's true. That is his email,
Scott,
by the way.
Scott as well.
Scott, yeah.
I was about to say, if you really want an honest take.
One of my favorite stories with Scott was Luke was talking. This is a completely programming conversation. Luke, everybody knows Luke, and what are his strengths? What would you say are his strengths?
In fitness or life?
Or
fitness.
mentality?
Fitness.
Obviously, mindset, just being able to go
super
dark.
aerobic and very powerful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Luke, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was 21.
21, 22. He's in the off season. He's like, I think I'm going to train for that 500 back squat, 500 or 5-minute mile. And Scott, stone cold look on his face. Because Luke at this point hadn't made it to the games. He goes, why don't you concentrate on trying to do 50 strict handstand push-ups in a reasonable amount of time? And Luke it was completely over his head. It was so good.
Oh,
but Scott,
why would I do that?
If you want like real honest take, send your videos to Scott.
He's been for it. Speaking of, there's another take in 20.
Scott's the only one who said my stash sucks. So
I would also apply
Aaron did too.
the standard logic.
Oh, dang it.
To
You
if,
did what?
If someone should quit their job, I would apply the standard logic.
Standard logic. If you can beat Tyler Christoffel in 90% of workouts, then you're good.
Yeah.
Oh, the standard. Yep. That's not bad. Well, I'll give one caveat. Which there's very, very few. I thought about making this video of like, if you're thinking about quitting your job or if you're thinking about maybe moving to Cookeville, watch this first. Type like some of this. But Seth, when he drove here in his van, I talked to him the first weekend.
Seth is also 19 when he moved here.
No,
18. No, I'm saying.
Yeah. So he's an 18, 19 kid. You can tell he looks fit, but he's like 15 pounds smaller. Seth is not on roids, by the way. People can say him that. He's just genetic freak and
Seth
worked
his butt off.
his butt off.
And he's a genetic freak.
Yeah. I sat there and talked to him. He's like, what do you think? Can I make the games? And I've seen him work out for 2 weeks. And you can kind of tell when some people move incredibly well. They just like go through workouts and always like, he's got some potential. And so I was like, it's possible, but at the end of the day, like you're going to have to work your butt off. You're going to have the genetics inside of you that you're created, like be able to do it. And then you'll see what happens. But there's absolutely no guarantee. If you're willing to do all that and take the chance, and he has no other responsibilities, then like you can do it.
And he's come up to me multiple times and be like, should I still do this? And I'm like, Seth, you've made improvement every single year. You work hard, you're doing all right. He's like, yeah, should I be doing something else? And like the jury's still out on like, college. You can still educate yourself, learn other ways. And so I'm like, dude, just if you feel like you're, I love Seth. Seth has been a good.
Seth's doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing. I was like, he's 2 now maybe?
Yeah, 22.
So it's like you're all right.
It's one of the I don't know, the beauties and the major weaknesses of CrossFit, like being a young sport, is that nobody talks this way in the NFL or the NBA or anything. Nobody's like, I can do that.
Yeah.
So it got a bunch of. This is where I can go like on a tangent, but it got a bunch of guys like me, like Division II, college football player, who was like, I like to work out. I like to push myself really hard. I can do that. I can do it at a high level, right? And then it just sucked us up. Right.
We were exactly like the minors of CrossFit. Like we were never gonna make the majors, but we really wanted to.
Back in like 13, 14, we actually had a shot. Like we weren't.
No, we didn't. Could have on
bro.
Team.
Speak for yourself.
No, we didn't.
No, I meant like regionals. Yeah, but it felt.
I mean,
but here's the deal:
but it was like high level.
Even then, from 5th to
it was
6th
a huge gap.
Was a massive drop.
Huge gap.
And 10th to 40th,
even more massive.
But what I'm saying is
yeah.
it gave us a glimmer of hope that
Sure.
in other professional sports we wouldn't have because they've been around so much longer, and that gap is so much bigger. Now that gap is starting to grow wider as CrossFit continues to grow, but it's still relatively small compared to other
at time, or feels accessible.
And so we get a lot of
it is accessible. But
speaking of that, my cousin is trying to organize another full pad alumni football game.
We're talking about learning to let go.
Let's go. Let's go.
I
get
could use another
baby.
concussion.
Go get injured.
Yeah,
that sounds so fun.
I'll keep you posted.
But it took a lot of like middle-aged men and some women, right? But a lot of us younger to middle-aged men who had already kind of like moved on to another season of life.
School,
Yeah, and we're like, oh, now I'm going to sacrifice time with my family, my career, like all these sort of things because I have a chance here. And I think it honestly, like it, as much as the methodology of CrossFit has changed people's lives for the better, the sport in some ways, I think, took away from a lot of lives and the quality of life.
Here we go.
No, I meant more of those guys that couldn't let go.
It's stolen my quality of life.
Yeah, well, touche.
But I did it to myself.
Yeah,
like I did it to myself. That's what I,
But it's just
conversation.
But I think that's why I love being here, because on this podcast, when we're talking about Mayhem Compete, we're talking about our competitor track. Part of it is, I mean, we're selling the track. We're like, we want you guys to do this. We still have somebody to come in, the GOAT, and be like, hey, don't do that double session if you're going to take away time from your kids.
Right.
Like, that's the Mayhem values that we have that's unlike any other camp or anybody else doing this.
Like, hey, if you are there and you're close, then heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, you've got options and we've got, levels.
Yep.
But if your goal is to go podium at a local competition, you can do this too, and there's a different level. Yep. And if that's what your goal is, and okay, so let's take that person that I'm telling you, hey, don't do that extra session. 6 weeks leading up to a competition, you could do that. Like, hey guys, I'm getting ready for like, if it's something you're passionate about and you want your kids or to be proud of you or see you do something hard, there's value, dude. Like in going and letting your kids see you suffer and do some like hard things, because now watching my kids, I've never once told them to work out. I've never but they see that, hey, my dad does hard things. Like, that's why I do Leadville. Partially is for me. Like, I need to, like, have that, like, I need a goal. I need something to gut check. But I want my kids to be like,
running the
my
marathon.
dad, it's 95 degrees outside. I don't want to go outside. My dad's out there sweating his butt off on the bike to do this race, to get a belt buckle.
Running the marathon, I was like, Madeline, you better have the boys at the finish line.
Right.
I want them to see daddy like collapse.
Yeah, I wish
like,
I wish I could have gotten the kids to Leadville, but you know, there's still time to do it.
But I think that's not Mayhem performance coaching. That's 95% of the people we coach are like, I've got a 9 to 5, I got a family, or they have a career, and they're like, I got 90 minutes, 5 days a week, maximize my time, right? And part of our job, I think, is, we talked about this a lot on those podcasts, is like pulling people back sometimes and being like, you told me these are your priorities, your faith, your family, like your career. And now you're telling me you want to do double sessions year round? Like, are you sure? Like that, we have a lot of those conversations with people where we're like, but this is what you told me your values are. And now you're trying to flip your calendar. And I agree with Rich. Maybe that's seasonal. Maybe it is just a few weeks leading into it. Like
2-3 times a year. That's fine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I encourage it. You know,
or even once every Masters, and you're gonna be on the same thing. Coach Michael tweak it, change up the strength some for you guys. But if you're like turning 40, you want to go after it this 1 year for that. Like I could see that too. Same idea, but it doesn't have to be the next 10 years. You're committed to doing this too, and you're gonna go from 90 minutes maybe for this year. You can give 2 hours for 6 months to see if you can make semifinals in your age group. Like, all right, heck yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yep. Yeah, that sums it up. I mean, we have, like you said, whatever you want, we got it. Yeah, you want to do more?
Don't not take a job because of it, or not like go to college unless, again, email us at.
Unless you snatch like 275 and you run 5
minutes. Depends on what
mile.
college.
That's true. College.
Seth,
you should not have been to college. You can call.
Unless you hit certain X, Y, and Z metrics and call us, and then we may
need to have those baseline metrics. If you can do all these, you should be full-time CrossFitter.
Come on.
We need to make that. Scott, I feel like you have a strong opinion about something on that.
No, I don't think so.
Have we said anything out of order?
Can we add an emotional and mental component to that too as well?
That's a whole nother podcast.
We'll say that.
Tell them a little bit about, because when you came in, so Foster came in, ramped up Mayhem performance coaching like a year and a half ago. And so his first client, it was Seth. I was like, all right, this dude's got potential. But he did great on compete track. I would just follow compete every day, do exactly what's there. He would have made semis, but he went team that year in the games. And so next year you picked him up.
I told him to.
No, that was the right thing to do too.
Yeah.
He just
100%.
Yeah. He got to train all summer with you guys. That was awesome.
That was the thing.
I said it was your fault. It was good.
No, I was kidding.
Oh, okay. And then, 23, you picked him up right before semis. But tell some about like what he's progressed with.
Yeah.
Oh, it was before the Open?
Yeah.
That semis, he got like 17th?
Yeah, I think 19th.
And then this year he missed it by like 8 points.
One spot, yeah. Luke took it.
So we can use him as a template a little bit for like right now in the offseason.
Luke
like,
almost lost it.
Oh, gosh.
Gosh, that was so hard to watch.
I was saying the optimistic way. Yeah. What were you going to say? Talk about what?
We can talk about him as kind of like just an example of an athlete, like something he needed to work on. I know a couple of examples.
There's a lot of examples. I think if we relate it more to like kind of the off season that we're talking about right now, like, and like, so the biggest thing with Seth is like his back would always blow up, right? He'd tweak his back regularly, and then his deadlift was almost 1-to-1 with his back squat. Like he could deadlift what he back squatted. And a lot of his, weak posterior chain and a lot of his power, Olympic lifting, power clean, power snatch were pretty low relative to like, his squat. Like we all know Seth's quads are just stupid.
Giant, yep.
Yeah. And so, thinking in terms of like periodization, how we blocked it, how I gave him an off season, like, phase 1 was like, let's strengthen your back, your posterior chain, build some strong hammies, strong glutes. And then, we put him on a couple deadlift cycles. He's put, I think, about 50 pounds on his deadlift in the past year. And I know the other day he just PR'd his power snatch by 30 pounds. He put 40 pounds on his power clean. And so,
longer aerobic.
Yeah, and then at the same time we were just building a bigger base. Like I won't say what he just ran. We just tested a 10K run for him, and he absolutely just smashed it. And so, we've been running 3 days a week with Seth, just spending like Rich was saying, like when we were doing all of the like heavy pulling from the ground, most of his conditioning has been on machines, right? Because it just doesn't beat him up, too much. And it's tough to train the deadlift. Like, it's so taxing. So we knew when we were doing a bunch of heavy pulls, I could keep him on the machines, beat him up a little bit less, be a little bit easier on his joints. And, I mean, I think last year his improvement, I mean, that's the thing too. Seth's going to get better almost no matter what he's doing. But I think we saw a pretty big improvement last
keep
year.
Him healthy though, is the big thing.
100%. Yeah, keep him healthy, and then
I almost killed him on pump sesh day.
Yeah. I think this year, I'm going to come out on a limb, be pretty like Seth's going to be formidable.
Wait till make the games, baby.
Yeah, I think
for sure
he's a shoo-in. Yeah, so
let's not get there. Let's keep him hungry.
Listen to that, Seth.
The beauty with Seth's mentality though is
he'll just work.
He's going to be hungry no matter what.
He's a good dude. No, I'm not saying he's complacent whatsoever.
But yeah. Anyway, to go back to just relate it, it's like it's kind of the same thought process that we have this off season, where it's like, hey, let's buy us a little bit more machine work. Let's lay that good powerlifting base, and we did the same thing with Seth. So
sure.
and then same idea. We did some heavy deadlifts, and then we kind of transitioned into more speed work with like power clean, power snatch. And that's where we saw those numbers shoot up.
If you're an athlete doing this too, if you're just a quarterfinal athlete and you want to do as good as possible, then this progression, we had the last one 5 miles or 50-minute machine, because we know like open and quarterfinals, like you're going to see the rower, and you might do shuttles, but we didn't even see those this year. So you guys need to be on the rower for sure. You could assault bike super transferable, but like you should probably do the machine versus running. Unless you just love running or so good at machines and you need to be on your feet. Otherwise, a lot of you guys need to do this as the machine progression, the one on Thursday and most likely Saturday, kind of the finishers for those days.
Go back to what Rich said too. When like the beauty of the machines is that they don't beat you up. Running is like running's not a machine.
No.
Yeah.
Beat you up.
Running beats me up.
Yeah, it's a lot of eccentrics and a lot of pounding, and so it's just tough to get strong when you're running a lot.
Yeah, if you're a guy like Seth, like, man, I can squat the house, but my pull needs work. Well, then
it's a little easier to get away with more running.
Yeah, it would be that. You could pull off one of these squat days and squat a little less to free up your knee some, and work in some bodybuilding, posterior chain work to add in layer in that. There's for sure the pieces are there. It may not always be exactly as you need, but we provide everything you would want or need to do that. Same idea with the gymnastics. Hit everything in here throughout the week. If you need more on that, bodybuilding would transfer, but also check out what's Rich doing. He's always doing a ton of
dumb stuff.
really
still
intense gymnastic.
Plan my next moves for next year.
What are you thinking?
Thinking a couple off-road triathlons, like Xteras.
Kind of like we did with
Modus. Yeah.
Not good memories.
Jake did not like that.
Not a fan. I'm on the road bike. That's a big focus with this cycle. We'll roll in. We'll try to do these every 8 weeks for sure, or we have 8 weeks of this, and then nerves will still ramp up even a little more with the strength focus, and as we get close to the season each time. Few closing out questions. There's a fun one I thought of. Rich, do you have a favorite off season you had?
2019 wasn't that fittest year? Would that be the?
I don't know if it was my favorite. Man, I loved the invitational years. They weren't really made for a crappy off season just because I was training all the time. But
October.
It was usually October, November. It's like CrossFit, normal CrossFit stuff. They never pick a date. It was always like a moving target. So, but yeah, those are my probably fondest memories competing, was being, anytime you're representing your country, minus the times that we lost. But
how many days did you walk in the gym like, I really don't want to be here?
It ebbed and flowed. Like 4 weeks of, glad to be here. Week or two of not. I never deloaded. So I'm sure that week or two that I would start to like hate life.
It's like your hormones are all out of whack.
Dude, all out of whack.
Is that when maybe you did more like road biking those years? Like
no, that was when I tore my meniscus because I couldn't run.
Oh.
Yeah.
Would you change that going back, or
what?
It's hard to say I'd change it when you're the
I had to
fittest.
learn, but I had to learn. If somebody tells me something, most
But
of the time I'm not going to listen. I have to learn for myself.
But would you go back now to young Rich and be like, take it easy this week?
I don't think you could, because we wouldn't be here.
Then
it changes the whole trajectory of everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're big
The
on
only thing I would ever go back and tell young Rich not to do is that workout in the basement where I tore my meniscus. Even though it's probably going to tear doing something else, but to me it's that one,
Yeah.
So one single, like the timeline split, like in Endgame when they pulled the time stone and it split an alternate reality.
Just like that.
Just like that. change the
This
terrain.
whole place would be blown up. It would
hate my left knee for that.
With Mayhem Performance Coaching, tell us a little bit about how, for the typical athlete, everyone's different, but like your open quarterfinals, how you guys are thinking about the off season, really similar to this, a little bit different, and how you're tracking, like kind of explain with Seth, if their front squat has to go up or their 2K row, how you're approaching this time of the year for those guys, and how you're tracking their progress on things like that.
Yeah, the same thought process. I think we've already explained it. Like with the transition of strength, it's very similar. The caveats would be like you were just saying, like, with compete, we're thinking, how do we keep things pretty balanced when it comes to strength, right? Like even Olympic lifting or absolute strength training with the power lifts. Whereas with an individual, like Seth as an example, we're thinking more, where are those, like Seth doesn't need to squat heavy that often, right? So, we're biasing more posterior chain, or maybe you have somebody who's, I got a guy right now, I think in Louisiana, and he was like the opposite of most people. Like growing up in college, like high school, college, he was like, I never skip leg day, but I didn't do much upper body training at all, and so his legs are very strong, but his bench, weighted pull up, strict press, like push press, but everything upper body is lagging significantly behind. So with him, it's like 3-4 days a week of upper body work and just touching his lower body, right? So that's where you can start to make like little adjustments, and then you can even get more granular and go, hey, some people it's not. You see this a lot, I think, typically in females, like typically upper pulling strength is not as good as upper pressing strength. You can get away with different volume with females versus males. Like I've traditionally seen, like anecdotally, you can really dump a lot of volume on upper body training with females, but men just don't seem to recover from it as well. I don't know if that's just because we can push a little bit harder on it. Maybe we just go a little bit deeper in it. So there's a lot of those like little caveats and nuances that come into play there. Where you can geek out. Whereas like in compete, we're just, we have kind of an avatar in mind, but we're trying to keep things pretty balanced. Right, where if you look at individualized programs with us, like, you're seeing less balance and more bias, right? And then you're playing the chess game though too. Like Rich has always said, like you want to get better at CrossFit, you do CrossFit. So we can't forget that we're playing a game, right? And there has to be a level of sport specificity, and we have to maintain movements, energy systems. Like we still have to touch it, and we can't completely get away from it.
Exactly.
So CrossFit is the most competitive. CrossFit is like the most, it is the hardest thing to write a program for, right? Like I would say out of any sport, right? Yeah. It's like a chess. It's like a chess game.
You just never know what the game's going to be.
Yeah, so you got to do a little bit of everything, and then figure out how do you bias it to get, like you always said, like get stronger at your weaknesses, but don't detrain your weaknesses.
Don't get away from your strengths.
Yeah, which is what's so it's the fun of it, but then the challenge of it too. If we wanted to coach, we always joke, Lockhart and I recently, like if we wanted to make a lot of money and work a lot less, we'd just do running programs.
Yeah.
Sorry to all the running coaches out there. I respect you.
There you go.
You can coach double the amount of people than you can CrossFitters because there's a lot less to it.
Play,
yeah.
Yep. No exact distance, time, and then one modality.
For sure.
Simple.
Yeah, and then one more thing too is like you're saying, okay, well, we're saying, most people have a strength deficit, but yeah, you still get people who come to you and they're like a former power lifter, or you get people who come to you and they're Olympic lifting and powerlifting are really strong, and aerobically they're really weak. And so they don't need to be doing like this particular cycle, or if they do, like you said, they do their conditioning first. Or maybe we're just doing more of like a conjugate approach where we just touch it, like heavy double, heavy triple, like we're just touching it to maintain it.
Actually, I literally talked to a guy yesterday who's here. He's going to be maybe 40, and he's a former powerlifting athlete and sprinter. So I was like, dude, you only need to do probably 2, maybe 3 days of the week of strength per week. So move the building blocks around. You do the Metcon first every day. And then on those conditioning days, you can slot that. The only thing you do on Thursday, Saturday, hit that first, hit your Metcon, and then you can finish up with strength on those. And
I'll add one more example too of where individualization helps is and plug performance coaching, where it's like the value of coaching the whole person, which we can still do through Mayhem Compete with conversations like this, which is you get a 30-year-old man, right, who's got 3 kids at home and a career, and really busy and sleeping 6.5 hours a night because he has to, and he's got a leadership role at his church and all these sort of things going on, all these like external stressors, and he's weak and he needs to get stronger. Well, lifting really heavy 5 days a week might not be a good idea for him, right? Because he can't recover from it. And so like either he needs to reduce his bucket of stress, which may not be realistic for him,
Stress is killer.
or he needs a different training protocol where he just gets smaller like intensity, but smaller doses of that intensity. And that's like more balanced throughout the week you could literally even change the day that he's doing those heavy lifts, right, on his least stressful days. So that's how we can really start to individualize things, make sure the nutrition's dialed in. And then, there is also a component of stress management, which is such a cliche term. Life, yeah. Like maybe even changing, like Sean talked about in his podcast, perception of stress. Like all those things I just mentioned for that particular guy, he might be going, my life is so stressful, when really it's like, actually, you're just really busy with really good things.
That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're a father. These are all great things, and you just needed to change your perception. So, and you know what? He changes his perception of that stress, he's probably going to get stronger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's all perception. What's the quote? Our minds are great and can make a
Dana
hell
White
of a
did a
heaven
little,
or heaven of a hell.
A little less polished version of that, but talking about like, and I'm just speaking from the men's side, like
Who?
Dana White.
Oh, I love him right now.
He's just talking about it's what you're supposed to do as a man. We're all complaining about this stress stuff, but you're providing for your family. You're supposed to be a father. You're supposed to be a husband. Like, what are you talking about?
And these are good things.
That's what you wanted. That's what you should want. And women, the same thing. Like there's things that women are built for, and that's what they do. Like my wife does really well with certain things that I don't do well with, and we're just different. Sorry, I was a lot to say that.
No, but those things impact whether or not you can get strong.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
It's physiology
on both sides,
101.
women, male and female.
For sure. Yep.
For sure. I look at and that goes back to the comes all the way back, circles back to the do not allow this to become another stress. It should be a stress relief.
Yeah.
Like it should be fun.
Yep.
If you're not doing it for a living, it should be fun. You do want to have, hey, I do want to get better, and there should be a little bit of that, but don't let it haunt you at night to where you're, thinking about that instead of.
I've got a good,
and I'm preaching to myself too.
Yeah.
There's times I still get like getting ready for Leadville. Like I get caught up when I'm at home when I should be like completely immersed in what I'm doing in my family, and I'm thinking, all right, what am I going to ride tomorrow? What route am I going to do? What do I need to be doing? Like it happens. Like I'm not saying that.
That's kind of good in a way though, because you're looking forward to it
for sure.
Like
but it also becomes an idol or something that you
have like the boundaries.
Sometimes you got to take and we're guilty of this in performance coach because this is our career is geeking out on the science and trying to learn how to get people really fit. But sometimes you got to take all that and throw it out the window. I've got a guy in Georgia that I coach, and he's got a really good career in finance, and he has like literally about 2-3 times a year where he closes like really big deals. And so it'll be like a 2 or actually more like a month period where, he's working like 10-hour days, and he just had his first baby. And so, we were on a call the other day, and he's like, we're trying to do all these strength progressions, and like, it's the program I was writing was not aligned with the season of life he's in. And so we threw it all out the window, and what we're doing is classic like CrossFit MGW. Mm-hmm. Like I literally like the old school CrossFit like level 1 template, and I'm just giving him fun. Yep. And I'm like, bro, you tell me what's really fun for you right now because of like what you said. Right now for him going in and doing like 5-3-1 back squat is really, it's stressful for him. He's like, I don't want to do this. But coming in and doing like a piece like we did this morning, something that's achievable for him, he's just having a good time. And there will be another time to come back to that
different seasons.
5-3-1.
Yeah. And I'm looking at when my kids move off and what am I going to do? So it's like it's going to happen.
Yep.
Gosh, that's what would get me back in the day, and still does for sure. I think there's some good to it, like especially the leaderboard. Like we didn't have that back in the day, a leaderboard to go look to every day, which is I would have loved, but the comparison would have just crushed me. Like if you lose every day,
bad idea.
Yeah, like you can use it. Like if you have your buddy, like that's what's cool, and
you can use it for a push, but you can also demoralize you.
Don't let it demoralize you, and then don't let the FOMO of like if you don't get your 90 minutes in, or I'm about to have a kid too. Like there's no chance I'll be able to hit all these workouts. You can't let the FOMO get to you so much that it's make it more of a stress instead of a excited to get back to it when you can get back to it. Definitely. Anything else?
I don't think so. Scott, you got anything?
Nope.
Bang. If you're not a Mayhem athlete, you want to be one, check out the link below for
Do
your
it.
7-day free trial. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in about 8 weeks. Check out Into the Storm. We'll be at some stuff here coming up, and hope you all have a great day.
Peace.